This podcast is sponsored by Bigger Brains, online training that won't bore you to tears. Expand the minds of your workforce at getbiggerbrains.com.
Welcome to Permission to Speak, the video blog and podcast that loiters at the intersection of leaders who want their people to speak up, technology that facilitates connections, and results that serve our higher purpose. Now, here's your host, Kelly Vandever.
Hi, welcome to the podcast. This is Kelly Vandever, and my special guest today is Jamie Sutherland. Jamie is the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder at Sonix. Did I say that right?
You did.
Okay, Sonix, where he drives their vision, strategy, and growth. His love for customers is only superseded by his affection for chocolate.
It's true.
Prior to Sonix, Jamie has been a seasoned software executive and company builder. He led the U.S. expansion of Xero, helping the company raise over $250 million in capital, reaching 700,000 customers and a $2.5 billion market cap. Before joining Xero, Jamie was the youngest executive at Sage, running its small business unit, which became the fastest growing business in North America. He also co-founded a taxi hailing app called TaxiNow that was subsequently acquired. In his spare time, Jamie can be found surfing, golfing, or picking up toys. Now, picking up toys, is that because you have little ones at home that you're picking up after, or is this your coworkers at Sonix?
Yeah. Maybe a little bit of both. No, it's I have kids. I've got 2 kids.
Oh, okay, all right, cool. And so that's all about Jamie. Welcome, Jamie, to the podcast.
Great to be here.
Excellent. Now, as you know, we start by asking a couple of quirky questions of our guests to get to know them a little as individuals, as people. So the first quirky question for you is, what is your guilty pleasure television show?
So the answer to that is a bit of a roundabout answer because I don't watch a ton of TV. I'm quite frustrated with cable TV and the number of ads that you get, and I find it actually a bit painful to watch. I do watch shows, but not regularly. So I veer towards Netflix or Amazon Video, and I will binge watch certain things. So I get caught up in that, and the availability of the shows one after another obviously makes it easy to do these binge watching. So the last one I watched, the full season, was Ozark, which is a bit of a quirky show.
Yes.
A little dark, but I like Jason Bateman, and I think it was well done. A little slow, but it was well done and kept me entertained. I think if you're thinking about cable broadcasts or regular broadcasts, it's mostly sports, and that's where I think these online institutions don't have the content, obviously. So you actually require a cable subscription in order to watch live sports. So that's what I'll tune into on TV.
Were you watching the World Series, or is that not necessarily your sport?
It's not my favorite thing to watch, but I did watch last night, and I thought that game was relatively boring, given where we came from the last 2 games prior to that. But good on Houston. I thought it was a well-fought series, and I think when you get to that level, it's fun to see just, no matter what sport it is, the greatest playing at their peak levels, and it's exciting no matter what.
Very cool, very cool. All righty. So my second quirky question is, what is your favorite possession?
So I thought about that question, and it's a toss-up between my guitar and my phone. The phone is something I literally cannot do without, and I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. And if you've ever been in a scenario where it's been taken away from you, or you don't have it, you realize you're missing something, and actually feel like your whole being is missing, which is kind of concerning, but also shows the utility and how beneficial these phones are. I remember one example where I was at the U.S. Golf Open, and for that event, they actually require you to check in your phone. And I didn't know that going there, but it's neither here nor there. But after 30 minutes walking around the golf course and not having a phone, it was like I was missing something, and that was a real eye opener on how important that device was to my everyday, what I do every day. From a guitar standpoint, I love music, and I've been playing guitar since I was a teenager, and it's one of those things where it's just really easy to lose yourself and not think about anything else when you're playing music. And I try to sing. I'm a terrible singer, but if I'm doing that, then I'm not thinking about anything else. I'm in the moment, and it's a good way to just sort of escape for a bit.
Very nice, very nice. You're welcome to bring out the guitar if you have it handy.
That's not going to happen.
Okay, darn. All right. So my next question, kind of that transitional question. One thing I read at the Sonix.ai website is that you said you help storytellers tell better stories. So my question to you is, what's your story? So how did you come to a place where you cared about people telling better stories?
Right. Yeah, it's I've had a number of different things that I've done over the past decade, but I feel like communication is really the heart of everything. It's really the foundation of all human relationships, and I think if you can put a communication into a story form, there's so much more that can be gathered from that experience, and so. I think it allows people to, experience information rather than just consume it. So anytime you can put it into a story, I think it's a lot more helpful to the audience or anybody that's consuming that information or knowledge. And I guess, it's from the early days, I've always admired great storytellers, and I don't consider myself a great storyteller. It's something I'd love to work on and get better at, but I always admired them. And I think it comes in many different forms. You've got, like we talked about, TV, you've got journalists and articles they write, blogs, videos, films, even talking to your kids or telling them a story. It's all, they're all stories. And I think that's, somewhere where, someone does a good job at that, it's really admirable. And I honestly think back to when I first was amazed about, I guess, the kind of commercialization of storytelling. For me, was the foundation of the internet. So back in the mid 90s, I remember being so amazed by GeoCities. If you recall, it was one of the first sites where you could create a website and do whatever you want with it and share it with anyone across the world, anywhere. And that just kind of blew me away. There's a ton of other examples. I recall from grade school doing a project on Alfred Hitchcock, and he's an amazing individual, and I had to watch a number of his films to do this project, and you get to really see the genius behind what he did and kind of pioneered this whole creation of suspense through filmmaking. And to this day, you can go back and look at those films and you can see the genius behind it. Still, some of his stuff freaks me out. And I think I remember the one film, I've watched it a few times, but The Birds, it's just a simple concept, but it's nightmarish, it's really freaky the way he did that. So, and that's just another element of storytelling. So there's lots. There's filmmakers, there's people in business like Steve Jobs, who tells great stories. There's authors. I think there's endless amounts, but I was just amazed at people that could tell a good story because, as a consumer of that, it feels good.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And a bad story is just not nearly as fun as the
Right.
great storytellers. Absolutely, yeah. And whenever I see a flock of birds anywhere, I kind of harken back to the birds and kind of get a little nervous there. So I can relate to that too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is a little bit of a different interview, and I appreciate you indulging me in this. And for our listeners, I asked Jamie reached out to me through LinkedIn to experiment with Sonix, the website and the tool that you use. And then I said in turn, hey, would you answer some questions for me about the needs in the IT industry? And I did use your tool. It's very cool, very user-friendly, really does a great job. But let me let you tell a little bit about what it is that you do and the value it brings, and then we'll switch back over to talking about some
Sure,
of the
sure.
IT type challenges. Yeah.
So I think the broad strokes for Sonix is, in our vision, is to create a place where storytellers can have all the tools they need to create and share their stories. And where we've started is with transcription, which, if you've talked to anyone that needs to transcribe audio or video, it's almost the bane of their existence. They hate it, they dislike it, they think it's painful. And um, and so what we've done is automate that process. And all you have to do is upload a video or audio file to Sonix, and then because we use machines, we can return a transcript in less time than the length of the recording. So if you've got a 30-minute file, you will receive that back in less than 30 minutes. Now, the issue with machines is they're not as good as humans in terms of accuracy. So we don't claim to be 100% accurate, but for many of our users, getting a partially complete transcript is good enough to get to the production or the share or whatever they need to do with it next. And then we've also built editing functionality right inside the transcript. So if you imagine looking at your browser and you see the transcript, and you can also play along and edit at the same time. So it's like a full-blown, what we call an audio text editor. So you can play and simultaneously edit at the same time with a bunch of other features. And so that's where we started, is just solving that problem of transcription and helping someone get a transcript quickly and turn that into the production process or wherever they're going to take that. And then from there, we plan on doing a number of other things, which extends it into sharing and marketing and whatnot. But that starting point, solving the major pain that anyone that's creating a story from an audio or video file is our starting point.
And it is very easy to use. I can testify to that. And just having it right there and playing and seeing the words light up as it's interpreting what you've written, it is a lot better than some of the other manual tools that automated tools I've tried.
That's because one of our co-founders is actually a designer, and so he spends a lot of time thinking about user experience. And design isn't necessarily how does this look, it's more about how does this work, and do I feel like it works the way it should naturally to make my production process go faster. And so we've spent, all of us, the founders of this company, have spent time in enterprise applications that have kind of generally been in legacy fields, so accounting and payroll, and those applications are just they hurt your eyes to look at some of the software that has been developed. And so what we have done in the past is turn those experiences into enjoyable experiences. And I feel like the same thing, the same paradigm or same philosophy applies to how we look at transcription.
And you've done a great job. Definitely.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Now, I want to shift gears now and start talking about some of the challenges that you've seen from a technology perspective, or from a leadership type perspective, and the folks that work in the technology industry. So one of the questions I wanted to start with, though, is it appears that you've worked in different sized organizations, from very large enterprise type organizations to smaller startups. Would you say some of the challenges vary a lot based on the size of the organization?
So that's a tough question to answer in 30 minutes, I think. The answer is yes and no. And there are things that are universal and would apply to any business, no matter if you're a solo entrepreneur or you're a 1,000-person business. And then there are things that you wouldn't see happen at a large corporation that you'd be spending time on at a small startup or small business. And so I think, there's probably frameworks and philosophies that apply to every business of all size. But if you were to drill down in the specifics under each of those philosophies, you'd probably have a different sort of tack or direction you take in order to solve whatever issue or problem you're having. And so I think of one example. For me, it's really important at any size is to be able to prioritize. And that's important from a leader of an organization to someone on the front lines on what is the most important thing I can be working on right now. And what I say is every single employee should know what their top 3 is at all times, and they should be spending at least 80% of their time on that. And if you don't know what your top 3 are, then you're probably wasting your time on something that doesn't it won't be as impactful as those things that are the most important. And it's a really hard exercise to maintain. And I go as far as literally putting sticky notes onto my laptop to say 1, 2, 3. Just remember these things are really important. And I recall at Xero specifically, it was one of the number one thing I needed to do at the time was hire a senior marketing person. And hiring involves so many different aspects, and there's something I could be doing every single day to help make that happen. Yes, we had recruiters and we had other people working on it, but what can I specifically do? If it's that important to this organization, what can I specifically do? So I think, take it from a large organization or even just a startup, we go through the same thing right now. We're pretty early in our journey, and it's a little more organic because we meet so regularly and we're all on the same page all the time, but we know what's the most important thing, and we're constantly talking about that and actually changing those priorities even on a weekly basis. But really important and varied depending on the size of the organization.
Okay, great. And a couple of the things the statements that I wanted to get your feedback on kind of deal with that. When I've talked to other people about it, priority has come up as a resounding need with the folks that I've talked to. So very cool.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to read some statements, and I'd like you to, if you would, just kind of rank them on a scale from 1 to 10, with 1 being that's not on my radar. It's not something I think about. It's not something it's a big deal for us. And 10 being, we were just talking about that yesterday. It's a challenge that we're figuring out, and there's a real need for us there. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay,
Yep.
and then I'll just ask some follow-on questions to dig down a little deeper for a few of those.
Great.
Okay, so the first one is stop the revolving door that is employee turnover. How would you rate that on a scale of 1 to 10 for y'all?
For our current business, it's 0.
Okay. So how much of it was it for like some of your previous roles?
Yeah, that depended on the journey and time of the company. So if I look at Xero, I was there from the very beginnings in the U.S., kicking things off, and so it was all about growth. And then by 5 years in, we certainly had some turnover at that period of time. And I'd say, it's probably a 5, right in the middle.
Okay. All right. And that maybe is not a fair question to ask because you've had quite a
also,
career.
Yeah, it's a hard one too, because I think it really matters that you retain key employees. And so it's not something I'd say we just need a retention policy across the board, but we've got certain people that call them 10X employees, and they're doing a great job, and how are we making sure that they're continue to be satisfied with their work wherever it is, because that's the one that's going to hurt you the most if you lose an employee like that.
Yeah. Okay. And when you talk about, I guess I want to dig into that a little more, the 10X employee. As you're identifying those people, is it policies, or are you just like giving them some love? I mean, how is it that you think about those folks to make sure that they are really connected to the purpose and the organization and wanting to stick around?
Yeah, identifying them, it's usually results-based and feedback from other employees that are working directly with them, underneath them, that they're working for. And so that, I think that's pretty clear on identification. And I think the biggest learning I've had is in terms of keeping an employee happy, there's so many different things that make different people tick. So it's really about finding what drives them, and money is generally not the right answer. And so it's like, what is it that gets you excited about coming to work in the morning, and what can we do to make that even more interesting for you. And so it really depends on the employee and what is that drives them.
Yeah, good. Okay. Okay, so my next statement is overcome the politics, turf wars, and egos that are killing collaboration.
Yeah, that's I've experienced that a lot, and it's really important to have a team function and work together. So I take that right down to the hiring policy that we would have, and making sure we don't have anybody with an ego that comes on board. No matter how skilled and talented and how many great accolades they've got, if they're not a team player and they're not going to work well with others, no interest in having them come on board. And then I think, the hard truths about this is sometimes you do make mistakes and you bring someone on board, but you need to solve that problem quickly. And I think that's for the better of the team in general, when you're able to act on something like that. Sometimes you can turn things around, don't get me wrong, but if this is a true bad seed that's causing problems across a team or a department, then it's time to part ways. And it's generally better for each party.
Right. So I hesitate to ask you if you can put a number on that where you're at now, because like everywhere where you're at now, I'm sure is perfect and everything goes really, really well. So, but if you could give an aggregate number from your years in the industry.
That's really important. And hiring, but it was near the top. It's real for me. Really important to make sure you have a high functioning team, and you don't want to disrupt that. And so, it would be a 9.
And how often did it become a problem in other organizations?
Not very often. I mean, you'd rarely see someone get through that was cause a real problem. But yeah, we did have it, and in our case, we dealt with it pretty quickly.
Gotcha. Okay. So the next one is how to prevent technicians from struggling once they're in leadership roles.
And what do you mean by technicians?
So somebody that's a smart IT guy. Sometimes we promote people, the old Peter Principle idea, that they're really great at what they do, and then we end up putting them in charge of other people that are doing the same thing. And they don't always make the transition because just because they have great technical skills, they don't necessarily thrive as a leader.
Right.
Is that something that you see or that's been an issue for you?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's, and it doesn't just apply to IT, but I understand that's what we're talking about here. I think you have those that express interest in managing people, but haven't had the opportunity to do it in the past, and so it becomes a new endeavor. But I think that's like really managing expectations of the team, that this person is new to the function, and then providing resources if you're going to make that decision to help that manager excel. I mean, the whole purpose is to try and make that work. And so, there's shadowing capabilities you could have. There's obviously external training. There's lots of feedback in the early days from employees or peers on things that are going well and things that aren't. And I think if you've got someone that truly wants to be a manager, I think they will succeed. I think what some people find is they're like, this isn't actually for me. I don't really enjoy all this people stuff. I'd rather do something else, and that's okay as well.
Yeah. Okay. And if you could put a number on that, like how often you had to worry about that, where 10 is I had to worry about it a lot, and 0 is didn't come up a ton.
Yeah, I'd say it's towards the lower end of the scale. I mean, we definitely went through that process with some, so it's probably a 3.
Okay. The next one is keeping up with the unrelenting pace of change so we remain relevant.
Yeah, that's a 10. I think in software and technology, it is a constant battle. There's, especially in our backyard in Silicon Valley, there's always another startup or company that's working on something that's in and around your space, and so you have to be abreast of all that and stay relevant. and move quickly. So yeah, that's something that's always top of my mind. What competitors are doing, how that overlaps with what we're doing, what strategies are they applying on in go-to-market activities. All that is absolutely, at least on my radar, on a daily basis.
And is it mostly the competitor landscape, or do you also get pulled in with some? Obviously, AI is part of what you are, but do some of the other technologies that are floating out around there also, blockchain or people talking about analytics and big data or 3D printing. I know that probably doesn't apply in your case, but those different buzzwords that get thrown around, how much of that has to be on your radar and play into that, or is it more just the competitive landscape?
No, it's both. Yeah, I am an avid user of Twitter, and I use news feeds to curate a lot of this into my inbox, and so yeah, if there's anything technically related to what we're working on, then I'd like to think I've got a pulse on that. And so right now, as you know, artificial intelligence is a buzzword. I think a lot of people are using it that aren't really doing what I would call artificial intelligence, but the reality is, if you can train machines to learn, there are a lot of different applications that I don't think we've seen yet, and we're seeing the benefits of that with Sonix, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Thank you. All right. This is something we may have kind of covered already, but managing the crushing weight of information overload so we can focus on what's most important.
Right. Yeah, I think that hits back to the prioritization. And it's time management prioritization. I mean, knowing your top three is important. I do spend time every morning going through the news, and that seems to be a good time because I haven't been engulfed in all the daily activities that come and are hard to get away from. But it is pretty impressive how much Twitter has impacted my life and the amount of information I consume on a daily basis, which I wouldn't have. And I think that's the benefit of being able to curate the content that comes through to you and only be subject to the stuff that matters. So it works for me really well.
So do you do that by how you alter which people you follow, or do you have special lists, or how do you do it with Twitter?
Yeah. Twitter, it's the people I follow.
Yeah. Okay. And so you're just looking at your stream that way.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. So if you had to put a number to that one, as far as how much it's something you think about.
Well, if it's prioritization, it's a 10 as well.
Okay. Cool. All right. So I have a bunch more, but rather than just kind of just reading down the whole list, has anything been glaringly missing that we haven't talked about so far, that when you think about your day-to-day and the things that consume you and making a difference in your space, are there things that haven't been talked about at all that
Well, I think we probably sort of touched on it a little bit, which is people being such an important aspect to your business, and I don't think you can underscore that enough. And if at any size of the organization, that matters, but I feel like it's really, really important as a startup. The founding members of the team and the early employees on that team. Making a mistake early on can cause a lot more problems. So yeah, I think people being your most valuable asset and just underscoring that, which it's been talked about a lot, obviously, but it just can't be forgotten. It's that important and can make or break a business.
So when it comes to a startup kind of organization, how much of that is done with people that you've worked with before, so you have that trust? And how do you augment when you don't have the particular skill set you might need and don't have that, buddy in your background type of thing?
Right. Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Where you start is your network or friends of friends, close references that you can trust. And even as you get into the earlier hires, I would apply the same logic. You just want that endorsement and trust. I'm not saying you can't get great people from all over the place, but having a strong endorsement from someone you trust already generally works well.
Gotcha. And then how do you make the right match when it's a skill set outside of your, or does that come up?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about that. It's I think it's the hiring process is really fascinating to me because I don't think it has been solved well by anybody. And the reality is the more time you can spend with an individual before they join the organization, the better off you'll be. But obviously, both sides don't have time to do that. So it's kind of counter to what should happen. So what I like to do is, there's obviously a few steps in the early stages, which is just a phone screen and then potentially a longer interview. And then it's really having that person come in and meet with different members of the team that they'll be working with. They don't have to be hiring managers. They don't have to be senior. But if you can get feedback from all over the organization, then I feel like that is a good way to remove the risk of bringing someone that isn't going to be a high performer. And people that are high performers want to work with people that are high performers. So I think that's a natural way to do it. It is a toss up. There's also things that we did for certain roles, which is it's kind of like a test. But for example, I think at Xero we had our salespeople do a demo to a few people of the product. And someone that goes as far as doing that and spending the time to invest is actually, that shows commitment already. And then how they perform, obviously, is also really important because this is what they're going to be doing a lot of the time. So that's also helpful if there's some sort of real experience that they can have with their colleagues that are doing the same thing, then I think you're also helping reduce that risk.
Okay. Well, thank you for letting me explore those ideas a little further. Before we sign off, you've had quite a journey on different kinds of roles and different size organizations and different things, different people you've served. So I'm curious, along the way, what has been one or two pleasant surprises that you've encountered?
Well, I think we'll circle back to the intro and my passion for customers and listening to them and talking to them. It still amazes me, when we build something, we launch something and we get it in a user's hands, how helpful and responsive users can be in providing, in-depth feedback. And what they may or may not understand is that feedback is unbelievably helpful to us as we build out the next phase of what we're building. And we have many users on Sonix right now and many that are continually providing feedback. And it's not like we're incentivizing them to do that. They're just, they see something, they like the product, they like this to be introduced, and we add it to our list and we turn it around, and I think it just generates this nice cycle. So yeah, what is a nice surprise to me is, it continues to be a nice surprise, is how engaged and helpful our customers are to our business.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add to the conversation, just to wrap things up, or to make a point that maybe a question you wish I'd asked that I didn't ask?
I think that was great. It was a pleasure speaking with you. And if anybody wants to test out Sonix, we do have 1 free hour for everybody that signs up to give it a shot and see if it works for them. And then hopefully they become a customer.
All right. And go ahead and give the website again.
It's www.sonix.ai.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, Jamie, for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And good luck with Sonix. It's a great product.
All right. Thank you very much.
This podcast was brought to you by Bigger Brains, online training that won't bore you to tears. Expand the minds of your workforce at getbiggerbrains.com. Thanks for tuning in to Permission to Speak. If you want to increase collaboration and innovation in your organization, check out more resources available at speakingpractically.com or give me a call, Kelly Vandever, at 770-597-1108.